Welcome to Geography Nerd! It's our pleasure to take you on a tour around the world to explore more about international geography. For the second episode, we'll continue with the tiny island country of Niue. If you haven't listened to the first episode, make sure to check it out on our YouTube channel, Geography Nerd Podcast, before listening to this one to get more context. We cover geographical information, tourist attractions, activities to do, and a bit of national culture.
Bruh, you gotta skip the intro. You're taking so much time over here. Let's jump right to that Pokemon money where we left up in episode 1.
Okay, chill. No need to be that eager, man.
Well, you knew it already, so obviously you're not as excited about it as me and the audience as well. None of us have ever heard of anything like Pokemon money before.
Actually, I would say cartoon design currency. On one side of a $1 coin, there is an imprint of Pokemon, Mickey Mouse, Disney, Star Wars characters, and on the other side, there is the Niue coat of arms symbol. While this kind of looks like fake money in other regions of the world, it's totally legit in Niue. The funny thing is, the government officials decided to do so simply because they think it will be a fantastic idea. Nowadays, although it remains to be a legal tender, most people tend to keep these special coins for their own collection. I was fascinated by this unique culture, so then I decided to research more about Niue. It turned out that Niue doesn't even have traffic lights at all. People who drive would only need to be aware of chickens, dogs, and especially potholes. The driving rules are easy to remember. Slow down at intersections, don't speed up beyond 40 kilometers an hour, and keep going in the left lane.
You know what? That's actually sound like in England, opposite to our driving lane here in Canada. But I'm a bit worried about having no traffic though. We're living here in a city with a bunch of traffic lights across the street, and there's still accidents happening almost every day.
Well, that's because you're living in a metropolitan city. Niue, like you mentioned, it's small both in size and in population. You're not going to be in a rush or any kind when you're there. Why? The land is not too big. Plus, there are only so many residents and visitors at a time to even cause a traffic jam. I don't think traffic jams even exist in Niue, so just take it easy when you drive in Niue. It will be much more enjoyable to drive at a low speed to cherish the coastal view and to ensure the safety of others on the island.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Another thing that visitors might want to look out for is that Sunday is a day seriously dedicated to resting for the island. Most stores will be closed and some activities like boating and fishing will be suspended. People usually spend this day attending church. I want to mention this so you guys can plan your trip to Niue accordingly on Sunday. The source of this tradition is nothing but Christianity, the most dominant religion in Niue. Christianity was introduced to the island more than 150 years ago and has been going on strong ever since. Up to 90% of Niueans are identified as Christians. This is why attending church on Sundays is a great way for visitors to immerse in the local culture as well. After knowing all these cultural practices, I realized that this tiny island is infused with such a chilled and laid-back vibe, which is what makes Niue so unique among others. To further discover and understand its culture, we have invited a specialist tour guide in the South Pacific area to an interview.
So, hello, Mr. Robin. Thank you so much for agreeing to be interviewed. We really appreciate your help and your time. And for the audience, Mr. Robin is our expert for this interview. He's the operations manager of South Pacific Pocket Guide, Oceania's #1 online travel guide. So would you like to introduce yourself further, Mr. Robin?
Yes, for sure. So the first thing I would like to say is that I am not actually from Niue. I just run a travel guide to help people discover this hidden gem of the South Pacific. South Pacific Pocket Guide is a not-for-profit corporation on which we are basically creating travel guides for all the underrepresented South Pacific nation to make sure that they are able to sustainably grow their economy through tourism rather than other means.
Great. So now we'll start with our first question. What are your favorite places in Niue and what do you suggest for people who plan to visit the country?
All right, so I'm not. I can talk for hours about everything I like
Yeah.
about Niue, so I'm just gonna pick a couple.
Mhm.
So one of the main one, and probably one thing that people will have heard about, is the Talava Arches, which are some really large arch just right on the coastline of Niue, and there's also some really small channel in which you can snorkel and see some really cool coral and fish. Another one which will be really different to that is the Togo Chasm, which has massive black, very sharp pinnacles
Mhm.
as you walk toward the coastline again. And then you go down a small wooden ladder and you discover a very, very, very small sandy oasis with like one palm tree just nestled in between the rock. It's really fantastic. Aside from that, any snorkeling spot through all the sea tracks. So I probably would mention sea track quite a fair amount when we discuss. It's basically access to the sea because Niue is a big rock, and so that's kind of the thing you want to explore. So there's plenty of snorkeling spot there, and swimming with whales, swimming with dolphins is pretty awesome. Now, when it comes to suggesting things to people that want to travel to Niue, they can check out nuepocketguide.com. It's our website, and it's free of charge to use, and you'll be able to find 100 of tips and all the things to do there and everything you need to plan your trip to Niue. Yeah, that's it.
Definitely, you guys need to check out his website because during the time that I work on this episode, I learned a lot from his website. Very valuable stuff. Is there anything that you believe could be improved further in Niue, whether it's service or transportation?
I think Niue is lucky enough to be such a small country that
Mhm.
you don't necessarily need like incredible improvements for when it comes to transportation.
Mhm.
You are more than welcome to rent a car for a couple of days when you're in Niue, and you'll be able to see a lot of the country, pretty much everything in the country within just that time frame. And then after, it's all about picking some of the sea tracks that you enjoy and just going down there and exploring. So I feel like they got themselves sorted out.
In your opinion, what are the reasons why Niue is one of the least visited countries when it offers such great natural landscapes, friendly locals, and unique activities to do, like swimming with whales and dolphins?
I think it comes down to the lack of know-how. You know, like people in Niue just don't know how to market themselves enough, and people from outside the world don't necessarily search for those kind of very very small countries. So that's the first thing, right? Nobody knows about Niue, and that's basically it. So that's why we created this travel guide and why we try to put Niue on the map. I think another obstacle to traveling to Niue is the fact that you have to go through New Zealand. So the only way to get to Niue is this flight, which is subventioned by New Zealand actually. So it runs as a loss business wise, which is this flight operated by Air New Zealand going to Niue. So you have to make your way to Auckland, New Zealand, and then you have to fly to Niue. So there is a few hoops to jump from. There is no direct flight San Francisco to Niue, for example, which will
Okay.
drive much more tourists in there. And the last thing is the size of the market. With a country of only 1,200 people, they just don't have the capacity to welcome that many people. And to be fair, that's what makes it that charming. You are rarely going to see a lot of tourists around in Niue, and quite often when you are traveling throughout your week, you'll see the 50 tourists at only one point.
Yeah, like I've read one of your articles, and it's funny, very funny that it says enjoy what Niue doesn't have, like no crowds, no traffic jams, like in other countries that people have been so familiar with.
Yeah, and it even goes deeper. Like you even have like much worse cell phone coverage and internet coverage, so you wouldn't even be able to be connected properly. Which is, it's an actual luxury here because we're connected all the time, and you feel compelled to
Mhm.
check. While if you can't, well then you actually truly are traveling with that person you're traveling with, and you truly connect with that person because you
Yeah.
do not have any other extra distractions.
Next question is, how does having a low national population affect Niue? Are there any pros and cons to that?
All right. So obviously, I do not live in Niue myself, but I've traveled there, and so I can just kind of see mostly from the outside, right?
Yep.
So if I had to pinpoint some cons, I will say that there is a little bit less access to services. There is no pharmacy, for example, over there, so you
Mhm.
have to source your medication from New Zealand. There is also very low amount of skills in there. I mean, each Niuean is actually very, very skilled themselves, but you don't necessarily have access to, you don't have a choice of 3 different plumbers. You don't have a choice of 3 different electricians. There is one person that will do all those jobs. You have like those 2 doctors, and that's it. So it's just a little bit of less access to services. Another thing I'll say that it really depends on a lot on import, right? So obviously, Niue has to import a lot of its products, and they definitely will be able to be sustainable if they were still living, within the same kind of ancestral lifestyle that they used to have. But with the advent of modern times and now everybody have on the cell phones and petrol and all that, you have to import everything, and so you're very much dependent on that one cargo ship that comes very irregularly, let's say. So that'd be the cons. But the pros about having a low population is that you have much more rooms to be sustainable. Getting habits to change on 1,200 people is much easier than 480 million or something like that they have in the US or other countries. It's much easier to get people to actually get new habits. And so I think that Niue is going to be at the forefront of sustainability in the coming years.
Yep.
Another good thing is that everybody knows each other. So as soon as you ask about something like, oh, I want to know about the honey, they do some honey over there. They know the honey guy, and they will call him, and they will say, oh yeah, just go there, turn there, and then you'll find him, and they give them a phone call, and everybody knows you as well. Like for us, for our first trip going there, we were going here to share our skills and create a travel guide for there. And really quickly, the word spread through the island. So people were kind of stopping us and say, hey, you need to come take a photo of us, of what we're doing, and all this kind of thing. So it's kind of really cool. But ultimately, I think the best thing about having a low national population is that you have a lot of room to grow personally, right? You've got to depend much more on yourself. You have to be much more self-sustainable. Yeah. Every single time nowadays in our everyday life, we literally just call a plumber and somebody fixes the tap, and you have no idea how that tap works. Well, in Niue, you've got to figure it out. You've got to fix it yourself, and you've got to sort that. So you can grow yourself. So you can grow a business as well, because you're probably going to be the only person doing that one trade in there, but also grow personally. And I love that. Yeah. Anyway, I can keep talking about Niue forever. So just stop me whenever you want me to stop.
Oh, next question is very interesting. Niue is famous for the special designs of its currency, having characters from movies such as Pokemon, Star Wars, and Disney. Do you know about the origin of this unique cultural practice?
All right, so I'm just going to establish a couple of things just to make it really clear to the audience here. So Niue is the country in free association with New Zealand, and it only uses one official legal tender currency, which is the New Zealand dollars. Now, those silver classic coins, which are minted and are Niue coins, and usually they are in very limited quantity, and they're special designs such as Pokemon, as you say, Star Wars, Disney. They are an oddity, and they are not something that you will use as a currency. It's something for the numismatic world, for people which are collecting coins. And I think it's a good way for the government to raise money. They just mint those, and then they're sold on the international market. Niueans do not walk around paying with Pokemon or Star Wars coins, just to make it really clear. They are silver coins which are worth hundreds of dollars. Like one of those coins is like worth $150 at minimum. So they're really expensive coins. So they don't go around paying with that. It's just a kind of a way to, as I said, raise money for the government, as well as probably advertise a little bit the country, because those Pokemon coins were actually getting quite a lot of traction in international media when they came out. And in 2022 they're doing a Mandalorian Baby Yoda coin, because obviously they do. Why not? And I also think there is a Superman one as well.
So the Pokemon money was never used as a legal tender, even in the past, right?
It is legal tender if you want to, but you'll be foolish to use a silver coin that's worth $150 to pay for $5 something.
Oh, yes.
No.
Yes.
Those are collector items. It's the same, you can find some you're in Canada right now. In the Canadian Mint sometimes mints special coin. For example, for the Vancouver 2008 Olympic Games, they had some special coins minted. Nobody will ever use those special minted silver coins to purchase goods and services. It is just for collectors.
Yeah, they would rather save it for their very own collection.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
And there is very little amount of Niueans which actually are collecting coins. So yeah.
Mhm. Yep.
When visitors come to Niue, are there any cultural taboos in Niue that they need to look out for?
So there's no major cultural taboos that you really need to be aware of. To be quite fair, it is a somewhat really well westernized culture. However, you do have to keep in mind that they are extremely religious, so you will have to be somewhat prude on what you're wearing. Making sure that you do have like semi-long skirt, not wearing your bathing suit outside of literally swimming in the water. Just cover yourself with a sarong, for example. Trying to avoid bathing suit that are like actual G-strings, and just have something that is, bikinis will be fine, but not something that goes right up. Just those kind of things. Just, be culturally appropriate. Remember that they're very religious. Aside from that, there is no major taboos there.
Great.
Okay. All right. So next question is that what are some of the most prominent cultural practices in Niue?
So Niue has actually quite a fun amount of cultural practices, which are extremely unique and pretty much unique to this very small island. So a couple of them that come to mind are more like personal. So probably as a traveler, you wouldn't really experience them, but they're kind of worth mentioning. So they do something called a hair cutting ceremony. So this is when a teenage boy will cut his long tail of hair that he has grown since childhood. And the ceremony is kind of like a big rite of passage kind of event with a large number of guests and family members. There is usually like a huge amount of food and gifting of money to the boy. And they do a similar things for the girls actually, which is when it's the first time that they ever get their ear pierced. So that's a fun private, kind of usually more reserved to like the family or the village of that person. So you wouldn't really experience that as a traveler. But there are, I think, 3 main events that travelers can experience, and which is quite cool in Niue. And the main one would be village show days. So each village in Niue has an annual village show day showcasing its crab, fish, and unga, which are coconut crabs, which are harvested by the locals. And it also includes the games and playing of like some local traditional games, which is quite cool. Display of handicraft, a lot of food for sale, all that. So the village show day are usually like a big ticket items. And when you travel in Niue, if you get to travel when there is a show day, you'll definitely remember it. Another one is called Takai, and it's a day which is usually happening around New Year, and everyone in Niue will decorate their vehicle and also their other transport method. They go a little crazy with that. So they decorate them a lot like crazy, and they go around the whole island making a lot of noise and throwing candies and lollies to the kids in the other village. So that's kind of fun. That's kind of a one-day event.
That sounds very festive.
Yeah, and one of them, which is the last one I'm going to mention, which is probably going to impact travelers the most, is the Koloama season. So it's probably the most unpredictable event in Niue, and it's when Niuean fish for juvenile goatfish, which are also known as Koloama in Niue. And the event can last anything from 2 weeks to a month. So it can be really long, and it typically occurs between February and March. And during that event, some of the sea tracks, so as I mentioned before, the sea tracks are basically access to the water, will be closed because the locals don't want tourists to go swim over there and scare the fish away. So if you were planning to do some selected sea tracks, they may be closed during that event, and you can't really predict when the goldfish decide to come out. So yeah, you've got to be aware of that.
Okay, that's really interesting. Okay, so Cyclone Hida, a Category 5 tropical cyclone, hit Niue Island and caused severe damage alongside killing 2 people in around 2004. Given the global climate change issues, a similar or even worse natural disaster could occur again. Do you know what actions are taken by Niue to prevent this from happening, like to prevent this disaster to happen again?
Yeah, so actually, one interesting fact, Niue has done something that's probably going to be impressive to most of your audience, but then I'll put it back in context. But they actually decided to relocate their capital city. So That sounds like a lot of work, but obviously, again, when your capital city is as small as it is in Niue, it's actually not as hard as it sounds to do. But they actually did relocate a lot of the buildings to locations that would be a little bit more, impervious to those kind of events. So they did some of that as well. They also have implemented tsunami and cyclone alarm systems, and the hospital was completely destroyed, but it was rebuilt and upgraded and be made cyclone-proof, and that was done much more inland, alongside with extra evacuation centers, which are also much more inland. So they have really strengthened a lot of that, and through some fundings, I think from the New Zealand fundings and UN fundings as well. And so yes, they've done a lot of that. Now Niue only suffers through one cyclone every 4 years on average, and to date there hasn't been anything that has created as much damage as what Heta did create. So it looks like they actually did solve the problem until something really, really massive happened, but that's quite unpredictable. So far, I think they've done a really good job, and they kept themselves very well safe.
As global warming is becoming a more daunting threat to the world, do you think that there could be a possibility that Niue could be submerged by the increasing sea level?
So Niue is often known as the rock of the South Pacific, right? So Niue is basically a big rock that stands out right on the Pacific. And when you actually arrive there, either by plane or sailing, you actually do notice it. It really stands out. So Niue, unlike a lot of the other island groups around the South Pacific, is actually between 28 to 60 meters above sea level. So it is actually standing quite high above sea level. So unlike many islands, Niue is not really in danger of having its land being washed away by rising sea level. However, there are some aspects of rising sea level that can tremendously affect Niue, because it will, if the sea levels are rising furthermore, it will threaten to spoil the island's supply of fresh water, because Niue lacks surface water. They're depending on groundwater taken from underground catches and also collected water from rain. So that's the only way that they get water. So if the sea levels are rising, that could actually merge and spoil the catchment within the island of fresh water, and that would be really detrimental to the local population. Other problem with rising sea level, loss of marine wildlife, because the locals are very much dependent on fishing over there. The coral could be damaged by rising sea levels and also cyclones and everything, and it's a big tourist attraction. So that would be a lot of loss of income for that, and also a big sort of food sources for the local as well, and that may be not good either. So I'm not saying that Niue is completely impervious to any climate change things, but I don't think it's going to drone anytime soon.
Well, that's all for the questions today. Yeah, thank you so much. We would like to thank Mr. Robin for spending his time with us, sharing his knowledge with the community of interested listeners out there. If you have any questions or want to know more about traveling in whether Australia, New Zealand, or Pacific Islands, remember to check out southpacificpocketguide.com. Mr. Robin and his team would be more than willing to help you. Do you have any questions for us, Mr. Robin?
No, I think you guys have done an absolutely fantastic job. And just make sure to send me a recording of this. I want to share it with our followers as well.
Definitely. Thank you so much and enjoy your Sunday. We wish you all the best for your upcoming busy week.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye, guys.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
I can't believe that we actually did an interview with him. This guy is so knowledgeable.
Yeah, and I can tell he has a strong passion for traveling too. He was so enthusiastic to answer all the questions and to share with us his understanding.
Also, I've been wondering, what languages are spoken in Niue?
Good question. The locals mostly communicate using English. Unfortunately, like any other Pacific languages, the native language Niueans have been classified by UNESCO as one of the languages definitely on the verge of extinction. In fact, children no longer learn Niuean as their mother tongue in their home anymore, and there was a concerning gradual decrease in the language usage from 2006 to 2013.
You know what? I bet they only teach English to the kids at school in Niue, right?
They sure do, but as an effort to nurture and embrace the Niuean culture, many early childhood centers and schools in New Zealand start to incorporate a Niuean language program into their curriculum. New Zealand is ironically home to 90 to 95% Niueans, so it does play a crucial role in preserving the Niuean identity.
Wait, why do almost all Niueans move to New Zealand?
I think it makes sense to me that people do so to have better opportunities to learn and to work. Ultimately, that improves their living conditions.
True, I would do the same thing if I were them.
So last but not least, it's a real shame to miss out on Niuean food.
Finally, I've been waiting for this part all the time.
Me too, bro. Niue has a proud history of abundant unique flavors. If you're on an island while a village is holding its annual show day, you're in for a treat. A local earth oven called umu will be used to cook some of the village's signature cuisine dishes. For those of you who don't know, an earth oven is a pit in the ground used to trap heat and bake, smoke, or steam food. You can expect to sample delicious local ingredients like talo, which is taro, cassava, breadfruit, and shellfish. You may even experience the local delicacy uga, which is coconut crab. There's a good selection of excellent cafes with astonishing views. Most of Niue's cafes and restaurants are in the main town of Alofi. Look out for different menus as some offer traditional Niuean food to try. There are great places to have a meal like the scenic Mataiva Resort and Hio Cafe. Hio at Hio Beach offers fresh food and friendly service out of a converted shipping container. If you are after fresh sandwiches and mini golf, go to Vile Llama or Crazy Uga for simple but tasty food. For dessert, you have to taste the exquisite coconut pie at Falalafa Cafe. If you're looking for places to eat in Niue on a Sunday when everything is closed, head to Washaway at Avateo Beach. In addition to Niue's local cuisine, you can also treat yourself with foreign dishes. Gil's Indian Restaurant serves authentic Indian food. If you're after New York-style pizza, book a table at Kai Ika Restaurant. For a more formal special occasion, try the Dolphin Restaurant at the Mataiva Resort. There's also a good usage of imported beer and wine on most menus. You'll find that Niuean food and drink prices are similar to those in New Zealand.
Awesome! This seems like a perfect spot for a foodie like me. I can't wait to try out all the mouth-watering dishes that you just brought up.
Honestly, the only reason I haven't flown to Niue is because it's not summer vacation yet, you know?
Well, yes sir, with summer right around the corner, Niue is definitely going to be one of the destinations I'm going to visit this summer. Alright, next up is a little bit of history for our listeners to understand more the evolution that helped shape the modern day Niue. We would like to bring you guys with us on a time traveling trip dating as far back as 900 CE.
This was when Niue was first settled by Samoans based on archaeological evidence. Fast forward nearly another millennium. It was then the famous British explorer Captain James Cook, captain of the British Royal Navy, who landed in Niue in 1744, and he called it the Savage Island because of the hostility and unfriendliness from Niueans. Great Britain set up a protectorate on Niue. Basically, they protect the country in Niue while it is under their control. Yet, it was annexed to New Zealand the following year. But not short after, it was separated and given its own island council and resident commissioner. It was not until 1960 that Niue had its first legislative assembly elected. And in 1966, the resident commissioners' power were partly delegated to the assembly, establishing a new independent Niueans government party. That did not last, however, as people voted in 1974 for a new constitution in association with New Zealand, one that we know and has lasted till today. Not relating to politics, but this is worth knowing. Thanks to its geographical location, Niue faces a lower chance of natural disaster compared to other Pacific countries. Nevertheless, a horrific tragedy occurred in 2004 when a Category 5 tropical cyclone called Hefa hit the island of Niue, Tonga, and American Samoa. This heavily devastated the economy of Niue, and they solely rebuilt off of foreign aid, mostly from the New Zealand government and the European Investment Bank the following year. Niue is now a member of the Pacific Island Forum and the Secretariat of the Pacific Community.
Okay, the history is interesting and all, but what about Niue currently? How is Niue doing right now?
Well, Niue is a self-governing island nation in free association with New Zealand.
Hold up. What do you mean by free association?
Well, that means New Zealand will conduct most of diplomatic relations on Niue's behalf. And since Niue is part of the realm of New Zealand, the citizens of Niue are also citizens of New Zealand, therefore have the same system of human rights as their closely related neighbors.
Okay, but it's still recognized as an independent country, right?
Yes, it still is. The government of Niue takes care of internal affairs, while all diplomatic relations work is done with assistance from New Zealand. Niue runs on New Zealand dollars and climate is between 20 to 30 degrees Celsius. That's why tourism is such a booming business in Niue. However, you should know that there are no ATMs in Niue, but you can withdraw cash from Kiwi Bank in Alofi. There are also no foreign exchange services either. Among the 14 scattered unique villages, the residents are very respectful, genuinely friendly, and hospitable to the travelers, and they've accepted that tourism is important to their economy and to their well-being. The church also plays a big part in Niue, and there are many denominations that are catered for. No matter what your religion is, you should consider joining a mass, so you can experience the beautiful singing and food. It is important to know that wearing a swimsuit in villages is not acceptable in Niue, and you should know that wearing a palo or sarong around your swimsuit in public is strongly recommended so as to not offend the locals.
Let's now move on to future events. What does the future hold for Niue? There is actually a plan that is specifically created just for that. It's called Niue Strategic Plan 2016 to 2026. Their plan is like a map for the Niue government to reach their vision. It's about creating a prosperous life for their citizens and while protecting marine life and the other environment. It is about creating wealth inside their country using their assets like tourism and fisheries. Its mission is to establish a thriving Niue in an ethical and sustainable manner by addressing socio-economic needs and development goals while preserving the cultural and historical values. According to its vision, Niue will remain an independent republic in free association with New Zealand. And now for our traveling tips. I bet that by now everyone is very eager to visit Niue, yeah?
Yes, sir.
So, as the last segment of the episode, we'll conclude with our list of top 5 traveling tips. Niue is a tiny island country and there are a lot of things you can do and sightsee on the island. That's why we would like to share with you these traveling tips so you can plan ahead and enjoy a more seamless experience in Niue. Number 1, we recommend that if you are going to swim in their beach, you would have to bring your reef shoes to protect your feet from the rugged and rocky coast. It also benefits their crystal clear blue ocean as well. There are essential snorkeling gears available for you to rent so that you can really enjoy your visit in Niue. Next up, taxi or public transport can only get you so far in Niue, and you might have wasted your time by waiting for public transport or taxi. The tip is that you have to rent a car for your trip. Car rental in New Zealand is only 50 to 55 New Zealand dollar per day, and they also offer deals such as buy for 6 days, get 1 day for free. And it's not a bad deal if you think about it. By doing so, you can see all the coastal highlights depending on you making your way there independently. The third tip is to stay for a while. Do not underestimate how much there is in Niue. We all know it's a small island, but it doesn't mean that there is only a little to see in the place. Plan to visit at least a week or 2 so that you could really enjoy and cherish each and every moment that you're there. You can experience sea tracks, snorkeling spots, markets, events, scuba diving, cultural tours, nature tours, and a bunch of more things you could do if you stay there for a while. Fourth traveling tip is that you have to be aware of seasonal activities in Niue. If you want to come to Niue to swim with whales or see a village show day or something else, you have to make sure you are there for the right season and not all the rainy and sad seasons. And finally, check your change. In Niue, you will always have to bring some cash because not all businesses in Niue accept MasterCard, Visa, or New Zealand debit cards. If you are paying cash, you will always need to check your change just to make sure it's right. As lovely as humans are, sometimes it gives too much. But then, if they give too much, be honest and respectfully give it back. And if they gave you too little, then politely ask and be respectful also.
Well, that's it for today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in with us. We hope that you have had a great time and have learned something for yourself about Niue. Please feel free to leave any comments or questions on our website. We really appreciate your opinions to help build our community. If you like the content that we're doing, make sure to smash that like button and follow us on Instagram or Twitter at Geography Nerd Podcast. Once again, this is Geography Nerd Podcast. Thank you for listening. Till next time.